So we've been really examining the character streams as opposed to the byte streams, and we focused initially on all of the reader classes that are designed as effectively input streams dedicated to characters. What we haven't spent too much time yet is examining the character equivalent of output streams, so the character streams for writing out to a destination. And so I want to do a quick introduction into the writer class. And so here we'll do an introduction. We'll talk about the writer class declaration. We'll talk about the writer constructors, the writer methods, and then we'll have some sample code that we can look at. So in terms of the introduction, the writer in Java is an abstract class, right? It's not designed to be directly instantiated, but there's going to be a lot of subclasses that go behind writer and actually give a definition to writers and membership into writer, just like what was true for reader, right? And so the writer class abstractly is a class that's role, its responsibility is used to write characters into a file or output device. So in other words, it defines the streaming character output. And since writer is an abstract class, like I said, we can't instantiate it. So Java writer class is the superclass for all other writer stream classes that are designed for performing all output operations on files. So the writer stream classes are similar to output stream classes with only one difference. The output stream classes are designed to write bytes, whereas the writer stream classes are designed to write characters. And again, I really like covering all this because when you look at the IO package, it can be very daunting without these kind of ability to categorize and understand what each one of these classes is doing. Okay, quick look at the writer class declaration. So the writer stream class extends the object class, and it implements the closable, the flushable, the appendable, and the auto-closable interfaces. So the general syntax to declare a writer stream class is this. So public abstract class writer, right? It's an abstract class. It extends object. So it's going to be the root writer inside of all the character stream writers. And it's going to implement the appendable, closable, and flushable interfaces because we want to be able to append to an output stream, and we have to be able to close and flush the contents that are kind of dangling in the stream to its destination. So the inheritance diagram would be giving a java.lang object, we will have a java.io writer that extends the object. Okay, so the writer subclass is the most important concrete subclass of the writer class is our output stream writer. So in addition to the output stream writer class, the java.io package also contains several writer classes that we'll mention, but we'll only take a look at a few of them. But they have file writer. We'll take a look at file writer. They have buffered writer. We will take a look at buffered writer. They have the character array or car array writer. They have a filter writer. They have a print writer, a string writer, and a pipe writer. We won't look directly at filter writer, but just like there's a filter stream, others we will look at subclasses to filter writer, like anything where you have to pass a reference into another writer into the reference of a particular writer, like say, for instance, a buffered writer, then you're using filter writer in between then. So effectively the same rules we've laid out for byte streams and the way that you have filter streams that do buffered streams or anything else is true for filter writer. Okay, so some fields that are worth mentioning inside of writer. So the writer stream class in Java defines one field, and that's a lock, right? So it has an object that it can bind to, and that's really just used to synchronize operations onto the stream. So it's worth knowing that because it's going to be something that we can pass into the constructor to define. So the writer stream has two constructors, and they're protected so that the subclasses can overload them as necessary, or I'm sorry, overwrite them as necessary. And so since these are protected, they're only accessible from the subclasses. So we can't directly like instantiate a writer, right? But that makes sense because they are, it's an abstract class anyway. So the constructor constructs a new character stream writer whose critical sections will synchronize on the writer itself, or we can pass in a lock into the writer constructor. And so that will synchronize to the object that we give to it. Okay, so the writer class defines the following methods in Java, all of which are public, and all these methods are identical to methods available in the output stream class. So the most important writer class methods are going to be listed in the next couple of slides. Now, a quick note is that all the methods defined in the Java writer class will throw an IO exception on error conditions. So just as for reference, some of the critical methods that are defined in writer, which means that all subclasses would also have access to, would be the ability to append. So you can pass in a character and it will go ahead and add that character to the end of the output stream. And so this obviously only takes a single character. We also have the ability to append a character sequence data type. And so that would append that to the end of the output stream. We have the ability to pass in append is also overloaded, where it can take in character sequence, and then as a second and third parameter, 2 integer values that give you a starting place and an ending place. And so that'll allow you to append that subsequence of characters in that specified space inside the output stream. We obviously have a close method. We always need to be able to close either our input or output streams. And so in an output stream, it'll flush it first and then close it. We have a flush method, which will flush the stream, flush the contents of the stream into its destination. We have a null writer method. So this method returns a new writer, which discards all the characters. We have a write method where we can pass in a character array. So this method writes an array of characters to the output stream. And then we also have a write method where we can pass in also an offset and a length value. Let's get this so it's a little bit more readable. We have a write method where we can just pass an integer value and that'll write a single character to the invoking output stream. So as you can see, all these write methods are very similar to the ones from ByteStream. Now we also have a write method where we can pass in strings. And so if we pass in a string to this write method, it'll go ahead and add that specified string to our output stream. And then we could do the same thing with the string, but also give that offset. So we can write a portion of a string beginning at the offset and going for the amount of characters that is represented by the length. Okay, let's take a look at a sample application where we're going to write some data to a file, to an output file with a writer. So this is going to be our application. And that's going to be our output. Let me jump over to IntelliJ so we can actually run this code and not just rely on what the slides say, but actually see that this works in see that this works. So here, let's go ahead, open writer tester. I'm going to close these other files. Okay. So if we're going to go ahead and do a demo of writer, we have to import writer because I want to access a subclass of writer from the perspective of the writer class, right? But in order to instantiate a variable to have a reference of a writer, I need one of the classes I can actually instantiate. So I'll use file writer, which we'll look at in just a moment, and also import IO exception. So I'm going to create a new class for this example code. I'll just call this write tester1. And so I'll create a main method. And just to remind you that, like, we're not always just throwing that IO exception. I'll nest this in a try catch block. So I'll have the try, which could all these method calls could potentially throw an IO exception. So since that's a checked exception, I have that try block, and then I'll try to catch a IO exception if it occurs. And if it does occur, I'll just go ahead and print the stack trace, which would be a console log of what caused that exception to occur. So here I'm going to create a new file writer. So this is a constructor I can actually invoke. It's from a concrete class. And so here I'm going to pass in the file name, output file.txt. So here I see that already exists. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete it. So now it does not exist. Yeah, do that refactor, and now it's removed. Okay, so that's going to be our destination file. Then I'm going to take some application data in the form of a string. So I have string data, hello world, and of course this is character writer. So I'm going to be writing characters. It's got to be text that I write into it. Then on my writer, so I've saved this as from the writer perspective. So all of the methods that I'd have access to are the ones that we just identified. So I'm going to use the write method. I'm going to pass in the string, because we saw that a string is a acceptable value that writer will take in as a parameter, and then I will close. And so if I go ahead and run this, I should, from the console level, if the code runs without causing an exception, I'll get a message that says successfully written. And now I have this new output file.txt that if I go and open it, now says hello world, which is the text I had right there. So I think since this is our first introduction into the writer class, let's talk about some of the differences between the writer and the output stream class. The output stream class is what we really discussed previously in terms of byte streams. So the three fundamental differences that I just want to go ahead and highlight is that the writer string class is designed to write characters, whereas the output string class is designed to write bytes. Second, the writer provides several append methods for appending characters to the output stream. These methods exist because of implementing java.lang appendable interface by the writer class. So in the case of the output streams, those methods simply don't exist. So that's something new that we get with writer. And we also have writer, and the third thing that I want to highlight is that writer defines the additional write methods, which include the ability to pass in a string to write into our character stream, our character output stream method for writing string objects. And so in the case of the output string class, that method doesn't exist either, any of those write methods that we saw. Excellent. So those are really the big differences on why you might want to use a writer versus an output stream. Now, we've really only looked at the abstract class of writer. So in the future presentations, we'll select some of those subclasses and really highlight what we can do with those and do some sample code of that. But in terms of just the abstract class of writer, that's really all I have to talk about with that.